I used to work as a 911 dispatcher in a small town in Oregon. Not a lot happened here compared to bigger cities, but that didn't mean it was always quiet. People assume it's all heart attacks and car crashes, but sometimes it's something else. This happened a few years ago, and I still think about it more often than I should. It was a Wednesday night around 2:30 a.m. I was covering the graveyard shift alone because the other dispatcher called in sick. That wasn't unusual. There were nights I worked solo before. Our call volume was so low most of the time that it wasn't a big deal. You might get 3 or 4 calls between midnight and 6, and most of them were minor. A noise complaint here, someone reporting a deer in the road, maybe a medical emergency once in a while. I was halfway through a lukewarm cup of coffee, scrolling through a training manual on my screen when line 5 lit up. I didn't think much of it. I pressed a button, put on my headset, and gave the standard greeting. 911, what's your emergency? There was no response, just breathing. Shallow, erratic breathing. The kind that sounds too close to the mic, like someone was trying to stay quiet, but couldn't control their fear. At first, I thought maybe it was a bad connection. I waited a second, listening. Then I tried again. Can you speak? Tap the phone if you're in danger. Still nothing, just the breathing. It wasn't quite gasping. It was lower, raspier, like someone who had been crying and was trying not to be heard. I tried pinging the location. Nothing. The system didn't get a lock. And the caller ID just read unknown. That's rare, but it happens. Sometimes older VoIP services or disconnected landlines send blank data when someone dials 911. We're trained to expect weird technical issues now and then. I kept the line open. A minute passed, then another. Just that quiet, shallow breathing. I was trained to never hang up on a call like that. It could be someone hiding from an intruder, or someone who couldn't speak due to a medical issue. I flagged it for monitoring and started a silent call report in the system. That's when something changed. The breathing stopped. I glanced at the waveform on the monitor. The call was still active. There were still audio blips registering, but no breathing now, just a low static hiss. Then, faintly, I started to hear something else. Clicking, light tapping, like fingernails gently brushing against a hard surface. Maybe plastic, maybe glass. It was inconsistent at first. Tap, 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 scrape. The kind of sound that doesn't belong in silence. It wasn't loud, but it was close to the mic, too close. I leaned in, just listening, trying to make sense of it. Then came the voice. If you're still with me, go ahead and like this video. I know it helps more than just me sleep better knowing I'm not the only one who's heard something they can't explain. It wasn't a whisper. It was just quiet, calm, controlled. It said, "Don't hang up." I froze. I've taken panic calls. I've heard people screaming. I've had prank callers before. But this voice was something else. It wasn't panicked. It wasn't aggressive. It was rehearsed. Like someone who had said it many times before. Like they knew exactly what effect it would have. I didn't speak. My hands hovered over the keyboard, not typing anymore. I just watched the waveform on the screen, still pulsing gently. The voice didn't come back. There was only tapping again. One slow, deliberate tap every few seconds. Then the call just ended. No click, no hang up. The line didn't flash. The waveform just went flat. It was like someone pulled the signal out from under it. If you ever worked a night shift or been alone during something that felt wrong, drop it in the comments. These stories stick with people. In the morning, I logged it like I was supposed to. My supervisor came in around 7 a.m. I explained everything. They pulled the call logs and tried to access the recording, but the audio file was corrupted. The file existed with a timestamp and duration, but when they tried to play it, it was blank. Just silence. No breathing. No voice. No tapping. No way to trace it. They told me it was probably a spoof call or some kind of tech glitch. I didn't push the issue. I mean, what else could I say? I wasn't hurt. There wasn't a crime scene. Just a strange call in the middle of the night. But that wasn't the end of it. 3 days later, Saturday night, I was on shift again. This time, someone else was scheduled to join me around 3 a.m., but until then, I was alone, filing reports, catching up on emails, the usual. At exactly 2:30 a.m., line 5 lit up again. Same display, unknown. I stared at it for a few seconds before I answered. Some part of me hoped it was just coincidence, maybe another glitch. But before I could even say hello, the voice came through again. Still listening. No breathing this time. No background noise. Just those 2 words. Clear. Icy. Still listening. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just sat there with my headset on, frozen. Then the line went dead, just like before. No disconnect noise. Just gone. I reported it again. This time, they told me it was probably someone playing games, spoofing numbers, maybe using a voice changer app, but that didn't explain the timing, or how they knew I was working alone both nights, or how they knew which line I'd be on. There's one more detail I haven't told many people. A week after that second call, I stayed a few minutes late after my shift to finish up some overdue paperwork. The new dispatcher coming on mentioned that line 5 had been acting weird lately, blinking randomly, showing activity even when no calls were coming in. He joked that it was haunted. I didn't laugh. I transferred to a bigger city about a year later. New center, new team, more staff on every shift. It's better in a lot of ways. Busier, sure, but you're never really alone. Still, even now, I avoid line 5 when I can, because sometimes when it lights up, I swear I can hear that slow, steady tapping start again, and I don't want to know what's on the other end. If you made it this far, thanks for sticking with me. Hit like if this one gave you chills. And if you've ever had an experience you can't explain, share in the comments below. You're not alone. This happened to me during my second year as a 911 dispatcher in upstate New York. It's not the worst call I've ever received, not by a long shot, but it's the one that still gets under my skin, not because of what happened, but because no one could ever explain it. It was mid-February, a Wednesday night. Snow had been falling hard since sunset, and by the time midnight rolled around, the roads were glazed with ice. Emergency crews were stretched in responding to accidents and down power lines. Our call board was full, but manageable. Nothing too out of the ordinary for a storm like that. Then, at exactly 1:17 a.m., I got a call from a landline. Caller ID displayed the name Marjorie C. and an address I didn't recognize right away, 37 Lambert Avenue. I knew most streets around here, and that one didn't ring a bell. Still, I answered as usual. 911, what's your emergency? There was a pause, long enough for me to wonder if it was a pocket dial or line issue. Then a voice, faint, shaky. It was a woman, elderly, maybe in her 70s or 80s. Her voice trembled as she spoke. Please send someone. He's in the house. I straightened in my chair. Ma'am, can you tell me who is in the house? Do you know them? She didn't answer the question, just repeated, a little louder, more desperate. He's in the house. I think he came in through the back door. Then nothing. The line dropped. Standard protocol says that even if a call cuts out, if there's even the slightest indication of danger, we send someone. I flagged it as a possible home invasion and dispatched the nearest unit. 2 officers, straight to 37 Lambert Avenue. They were less than 10 minutes away. They arrived in under 7. But when they got there, they found nothing. The house was completely dark. No porch light, no interior lights, no sign of activity. The driveway was blanketed in untouched snow. No tire tracks, no footprints. They knocked. No response. Eventually, they forced entry to the front door to check for any victims inside. What they found was unexpected. The house was abandoned, completely empty. According to their report, it didn't just look unoccupied. It looked long unoccupied. Years, maybe. The walls were peeling, windows boarded, air thick with dust. Cobwebs stretched across corners of door frames, undisturbed. The officer said the place felt frozen in time, like no one had touched it in years. There was no sign of forced entry through the back door. In fact, they said even the cobwebs there were unbroken. No footprints. No signs anyone had been inside or outside in the storm. If you're into stories that don't have clean endings or explanations, take a second and like this video. These kinds of calls still keep a lot of dispatchers up at night. I pulled the call logs and checked the landline number. Sure enough, it was real. It matched the public records tied to the house. But when we contacted the phone company, they told us something we didn't expect. That phone line had been disconnected 4 years earlier. No active account, no dial tone, no power running through the circuit. Not technically possible, the rep told us. But I'd heard the voice, so had our recording system. I even played it back. It was faint, but there, I figured maybe it was a weird software glitch. Or maybe someone spoofed the number to freak us out. It happens. Then the second call came, exactly 1 week later, to the minute, 1:17 a.m. Same number, same name, same address. By now, I recognized it instantly. A chill went down my spine as soon as I saw the screen light up. I took the call, heart already beating faster. The voice was even fainter this time. Still trembling, still scared. "He's here again. Please help me." He found the basement door. That was it. Then silence. I dispatched the same 2 officers. They were already familiar with the place and made even better time getting there. The results? Exactly the same. No lights, no footprints, no forced entry, no recent disturbance. They did a full sweep, top to bottom, including the basement and crawl space. The house was untouched. No squatters, no animals, no signs that anyone had been there since the last check. But something new caught their attention. If you're still watching, make sure you're subscribed. These stories don't always get wrapped up, but sharing them helps more than you think. One of the officers noticed a phone on the basement wall. Old, heavy, the kind with a rotary dial, and a cord that looked like it hadn't been touched since the 80s. But the receiver was off the hook. They didn't remember it from a first visit. And this time, right next to it, they spotted a small wooden door recessed into the concrete wall, partially hidden by some old shelving. The door was slightly ajar, just enough to notice it. They opened it briefly. The space behind it looked like a storage area. Unfinished, no lights, just dirt and concrete. But both officers swore the air coming out of it was unnaturally cold. Not just cold like a draft, but icy. And there was a smell musty, like wet earth and mildew. They didn't step inside. Later that morning, I pulled up the property records. Marjorie C. had owned the house, lived there for decades. According to public death records, she died of a heart attack in 2014. At home, alone, no children, no family in the area, no one left behind. The third week, I was working solo again. I didn't want to answer the call. I even considered asking someone else to cover the hour around 1:17 a.m., but I didn't. When 1:17 came and went with no call, I felt an enormous wave of relief. I thought maybe whatever was finally done. Then the screen lit up at 1:22 a.m. This time, it didn't show a number, just private caller. Something in me knew it was her, and when I picked up, the voice confirmed it. "He's in the basement now," she said, even softer than before. "I can't keep the door closed." 18 seconds passed. I didn't even try to talk over her. I just listened. Then there was a sharp sound, like the phone being dropped or yanked away, and the call ended. We never received another. We asked the phone company to review their systems again. They found nothing. No call data. No source. No evidence that anyone had dialed 911 from that location. According to them, it never happened. The official explanation was that maybe we've been experiencing an internal malfunction. That's all they could offer. But there's something that sticks with me. Something I haven't been able to shake. The last time officers were there, they took another look at that narrow basement room. They didn't go far inside, just enough to shine a light. The floor inside was dirt, just packed earth. But they noticed something odd near the far wall. A second old rotary phone, completely unconnected. No wires, just sitting on the ground, and beside it, a small pile of bones. Tiny, animal bones, maybe, or something else. The officers sealed the space, marked it as hazardous, but no one's been back in since. The city listed the property for demolition a year later. Last I heard, the paperwork stalled. But every so often, we still get false alarm triggered by a motion sensor near the front porch. No one responds. No one is ever there. So, yeah, sometimes calls come in that don't belong, from people who shouldn't be able to speak. And if you ever hear a voice ask for help from a place long forgotten, listen carefully, because not every 911 call comes from the living. This one has never left me, and I've taken some seriously disturbing calls over the years. But this one, it wasn't just what I heard. It was what I couldn't explain that made it worse. This happened about 5 years ago when I was still relatively new at dispatch. I was on the overnight shift, 2 a.m. to 10 a.m., the hours where everything is quiet until it suddenly isn't. We had a skeleton crew, just 2 of us in the room. You learn to enjoy the silence during those hours, until something breaks it. It was around 3:40 in the morning. The night had been slow. I just made myself a bad cup of vending machine coffee when a call came through. No name, no number, just unknown caller. Not unusual in itself. Sometimes VoIP systems or old landlines do that. But the moment I answered, I knew this was a normal call. I said, 911, what's your emergency? Nothing. No voice. No static. Just breathing. Very slow, very steady. Not panicked. Not heavy. Just deliberate. Deep inhale. Pause. Long exhale. I asked again. This is 911. If you need help, say something. Tap the phone. Anything. Still just the breathing. It went on like that for over a minute. Not a sound in the background. No voices. No ambient noise. Just breathing. Like someone sitting very still with a receiver against their mouth. I tried to stay calm. You never know who's on the other end. Could be someone having a medical emergency, unable to speak. Could be someone hiding from an intruder. We're trained to keep them talking or listening. Anything that might help trace the call or keep them safe. Normally, we can trace a call, especially if it's from a landline or a registered phone. But this one, nothing. Untraceable. It just showed as unknown origin. After about 2.5 minutes, I was getting ready to end the call. But just before I did, I heard something. The breathing changed. It grew faster. Not heavy like panic, but more excited, like whoever was had just seen something, or someone. And then the first sound, a voice, whispered, male, rough. It said, he doesn't know yet. That's all. I asked again who it was, what they meant, if they needed help. No reply. Then the breathing returned to that same slow rhythm. Eventually, the call disconnected. No click, no tone, just silence. If you're still watching, do me a favor and like this video. Calls like these stay with you. And I think some people out there need to know they're not alone in hearing things that don't make sense. I flagged the incident, wrote up the report, and passed it on to my supervisor. We filed it as a nuisance or a possible prank. But I knew in my gut it wasn't just that. Something about the rhythm of the breathing felt off. Like whoever was on the other end wanted to be heard, but not understood. A few days passed. I tried to shake it off. Late nights and weird calls go hand in hand in this job. Then the second call came. Same time of night. 3:40 a.m., same unknown caller. Same breathing. But this time, the line picked up with a voice already speaking. He's starting to notice. Then breathing again. Closer. Louder in the receiver. That was it. I ran the call through our systems. Still no trace. No number. No location. It was like the call never existed. I stayed late after my shift and checked the logs manually. I couldn't let it go. I want to know if maybe someone was playing a trick. Another dispatcher maybe, or some radio interference. But here's the thing. The call hadn't come through our normal lines. It wasn't in the system log. It had only recorded on my headset, not on the backup server, which shouldn't be possible. I showed it to our tech guy. He had no explanation. Said the signal looked more like an internal loopback than an inbound call, that it might have originated within the system. But that's not possible. No one can make a call from inside a 911 server. Subscribe if you haven't already. These are the kinds of stories that people love to dismiss until something like it happens to them. The third call happened a week later. Same time, 3:40. This time, there was no breathing at first, just a voice. It said, "He's awake now. He sees you." Then a burst of static, like someone dragging the mic across fabric. I froze. The voice sounded closer this time, as if it was speaking right into my ear. And then I heard a second sound. My own name, whispered, not over the headset, not in the recording, but in the room. I stood up so fast my chair tipped over. I spun around, heart racing, convinced I was about to come face to face with someone, but there was no one else there. Just me in the dispatch office. Empty walls, buzzing fluorescent lights. I shut off the headset and switched to speaker, pacing like an idiot, trying to rationalize it. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was imagining it, but it didn't feel imagined. After that night, the calls stopped, but I started hearing breathing in places I shouldn't. Faint just behind me, in my own house, while driving, sometimes right before I fall asleep. Always the same rhythm, deliberate, intentional. I got my hearing checked. I even recorded audio in my house overnight. Nothing, but I know what I hear, or at least what I feel I hear. It's never aggressive, just steady, present, watching. I'm still on the job, still taking calls. But every time I see unknown caller come up, I get this knot in my stomach, because I know what's coming. And if it ever says more than a few words, I don't think I want to know what comes next.